it gonna trouble the water?
Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. Guns ain't gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children.
Out in the street, they call it murder. Out in the street, they
Well,
call
my
it
motherfucking
murder.
They got a nigga shedding tears, reminiscing on my past fears. Cause shit was hectic on me last year. It appears that I've been marked for death. My heart is breath, the underlying cause of my arrest. My life is stress, and no rest, forever weary. My eyes stay teary for all the brothers that I buried in the cemetery. Shit is scary, our black on black crime legendary. But at times unnecessary, I'm getting worried. Teardrops and closed caskets. The 3 strikes law is drastic and certain death for us ghetto bastards. What can we do when we're arrested? But open fire. Life in the pen ain't for me, cause I'd rather die. But don't cry through your despair. I wonder if the Lord still cares for us niggas on welfare.
Macintosh, lightning hits the top of the church steeple when I'm writing. Send me your ammo, no
Out in the
hyphen.
street, they call it murder.
My block.
Out in the street, they call it murder.
Makeup of that people. It's what they have in common. It's their interests. It's basically your livelihood. It's your style, your lifestyle. And culture is what motivates, innovates, creates people. It raises families. Culture keeps things in order. Come out of a certain culture. You know, it's our culture to do this. You know what I'm saying? And people, if people don't have a tight-knit culture, then they lack a tight-knit community. The community and the culture in the tri-state area, and because there is no African culture in the tri-state area. The experience living in a community in this area, in Huntington, living in an area where there was actually the concept of it takes a village to raise a child.
Artisan Avenue, that's a step in the right direction because, you know, you cannot ignore what's going on there. You can't. And for far too long, I truly believe that city leaders said, hey, look, that's their problem, let them deal with it. So, and we saw what happened. You know, 4 people getting murdered, countless other shootings, and
opportunities are not there, and you know they think, well, why am I going to do this?
You know, the monetary resources together to ensure that this doesn't happen again. It's like, you know, we have to be more proactive instead of reactive, and I think that's a large part of what's happened to Fairfield. It's just like anything that an outside entity wants to do, we might not like it, we might complain about it, but very little action goes forward.
Your central city and your major city in the metropolitan, the SMSA, to continue to decrease, then that is suicide. That is absolutely public suicide. The black community is an invaluable asset. The black community has resilience.
Early, and can teach them that they are somebody and that their people have been somebody just like everybody else. We don't need to say no to drugs because they don't want them.
Welcome to Community and Culture, Part 1, The Foundation. I would like to bring you along on a journey through time of a people of African descent, from the rich soil of Africa to America, through slavery and civil rights, up to their struggle and strife, and to a look into the future. I'm Norman Branch, and I'll be your host, guiding you through this expedition of trials and tribulations. This journey I would you to travel with me begins with the Underground Railroad, which all of us should be familiar with. The significance of this major historical achievement led by Harriet Tubman, referred to as Moses, actually trekked across the soils of Huntington, West Virginia. In order for slaves to be free, they had to cross north, and that physical boundary in the north was the Ohio River. That brought them into now what is Chesapeake, Burlington, South Point, Proctorville, and Ironton, Ohio. There are numerous houses that still stand for Underground Railroad sites, museums, and even some churches.
Some time, go into the history and the development of the city of Huntington and the tri-state area, the African American population, freedom. There was a thing called the Underground Railroad, which Harriet Tubman, Moses, formed. She escaped with 300 slaves. Not once was she caught, or any slave that she freed was ever lost or left behind. That was amazing. There were 37 original slaves that were freed that settled in the southern part of Ohio, which is now Burlington, Ohio. Let's listen as Mr. Owen Pleasant so gratefully tells us a story.
In 1846, there was a man named James Tryman down in Virginia, Madison County. He had a lot of slaves. And he began to get sick, and he began to worry what was going to happen to his slaves. So he read an article in the paper about he had tents made for them to live in until they could get started, and they brought provisions for them to farm, cows and horses, wagons, and tools to work with. So they, our people always did believe in prayer. Slaves did. Mm-hmm. They'd pray and sing a song and slip away, but the white folks didn't know what they were singing. When they'd sing a song some nights and slaves would be getting ready to leave the next day, but the white folks didn't know it. So they got here in Burlington and got set up. So they worshiped in a little house here for a while. They heard about the church back on Macedonia. So they went back there to service. So they worshiped back there for 5 or 6 years, and they ground in Lawrence County for sale. So he sent his son here to see about this ground. And his son happened to be my grandmother's brother. You can understand that. Well, he came here and saw first to see if the white people would accept blacks here. There wasn't any blacks here. One, a few here, wasn't, but a few. They need somebody to work on the farm, so they would gladly accept. So he got his lawyers together and made a proclamation and fixed up a will and so forth about setting the slaves free. And he made the proclamation. He set those 37 free. He had three more. He had more than 37. They had 41, I think, but three of them stayed. And one was born on the way here. My wife's father was born on the way here, Traveler Smith. You might have heard of Smiths in Huntington, Traveler Smith. One of his sons was principal of Douglas High School. And they purchased this 640 acres and gave it to those 37 people that were freed to come here. Mr. Tryman was such a powerful man in politics that after he freed the slaves, they received a charter and built a church here in Burlington. And they bought a lot from the school board up here for $100. They built a wooden church here in Burlington. And we worshiped in that church here till 1965. Now all this property that Negroes had here, they farmed and they went to school in a dream. And he said, if my people which are called my name will humble themselves together and pray and seek thy face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, forgive their sins and heal their lands. That's what's wrong with America.
Chronicles 7:14.
7:14. People ain't gonna do that. Don't you know? I'm telling you, I've been here. We got some awful good white people here, and we got some awful bad ones. We got some here just like always been.
City 6 years after slavery was abolished, founded by Collis P. Huntington, who was an entrepreneur who bought land from Gondot all the way clear down to the west end of Huntington. He bought this land to build railroad tracks, or C&O railroad tracks. He knew along the riverside that it was going to be a gold mine, Collis P. Huntington here in the area, and you would assume by looking at some of the books in history here in West Virginia in the libraries and other places that they hold history, no pictures of any African Americans are located in these books provided about these African Americans who had hospitals, daycares, churches, dry cleaning businesses here in this area, and they were prospering. And you'll see as Miss Edna Duckworth gives a little bit more reason to why African Americans.
They had to be inventive and all of those things to survive, and they were that. What I've heard leads me to believe there were at least 4 different groups of blacks, or blacks with 4 different reasons to be here when Mr. Huntington came. There were the men and their families which accompanied Mr. C.P. Huntington to labor for the C&O Railroad. And there was the Norway Avenue group of settlement. And there were the free men and fugitive slaves which settled at the confluence of the Ohio River and the Big Sandy in South Point, Ohio area. They migrated across the Ohio to take part in Huntington's development. That is a big group of people that laid bricks, they carried hod, and all that kind of stuff. Mr. Johnson, he did the motor cart up and down the railroad to see that the lights were turned on when there were, before there was electricity. And there's the Reverend Nelson Barnett, who ended up owning so much property, and he was a preacher, and he was this, and his name is still on all of the, then Cottage Grove up in the Holly Hill, and like that. Believe it or not, some came because of the schools to educate their children. in the mountains of West Virginia, they did not have high schools. So that's one of the things that I think is a very important factor about the schools. Randolph, they spoke. And why on earth our black folks couldn't see it, I got mad at them and sick of them, and that's it. Let's see. Well, okay, here the old building was all that we had. It was our own. It was our theater, the place for social activities, and even our library, for we were not welcome in the Carnegie. You forget that. And they did have a little bit of a stage down there that we ended up.
Truly an honored and dedicated citizen, Miss Edna Duckworth, was called to rest in 2005. May she rest in peace.
With the Holy Ghost, how he healed me to the uttermost. When I think about the Lord, how he picked me up and turned me around, how he placed my feet on solid ground. When I think about the Lord, when I think about the Lord, how he saved me.
Woodson wrote The Miseducation of the Negro. Carter G. Woodson was a citizen of Huntington, West Virginia. He went to school here at Douglas High School, graduated at the age of 20, became the principal, and went on to achieve greater heights for the African American people all around the world. Now, Carter G. Woodson is known as the father of Negro History Week, which now we celebrate in February as African American History Month. Carter G. Woodson, a native of Huntington, West Virginia, right here in our community, went to school, built a house, and now there's a statue on Hal Greer Boulevard.
And they taught other people music. Look at basketball, football. Every year, 10, 15 cats would come out those basketball, football players. And little kids look up to them. Who we look up to now? Rappers. The old auditorium at Douglas High School still looks the same as it looked in 1954. They got boxes in there. Why can't somebody in this city give these individuals who want to volunteer their time a place to work in and teach the young kids something other than your mammy and the MF word and whatever else, guns in their shoes and shooting each other and God knows what else. And if you don't put God in 17th Street, you go down up from Arch Avenue, there's a house on the left, Carter G. Woodson built that. He done the same way. The community done that. You go up there now, this crackhead sitting in the front room smoking crack. They done took all the copper off the walls. They tore the place up inside. The father of black history built a house in Huntington, West Virginia, and you let us sit there and cheer to crackheads get it. Well, they can take Carter G. Woodson's house, they can take anybody else's house. And there was quite a few guys out there, friends of mine, some of them got their hair most of their life, and they're on drugs. And nothing you can say deter them, except education and a job. Education comes first. Most of you guys you see out there did not get the education. You can't build a house on a weak foundation, and that's the problem is. You take these young guys, get them back at school, or some program where they can get a piece of paper in their hand that said they accomplished this, they've done everybody else done, finished high school. I don't know if GED or what you want to call it, but it gives them a foundation to work from, and it stops, not completely, but it stops new ones from doing it because now they got an education and a foundation, and they don't look for the negative things of life, look for the positive.
Promote their education. What are the African Americans in the tri-state area doing to promote their economic development, their social and emotional needs for their children?
We need African-centered political action committees. We need African-centered development committees. We need African-centered investment clubs. Now, when I say African-centered, it means it is specific in trying to develop aspects of the black community. It does not exclude whites, red, brown, yellow, or anyone else. It simply says Afrocentric perspectives are just as legitimate as white-centric and Anglo-centric. You have the theater industry here. You no longer have the black businesses here. You no longer have even the club scene, with the exception of maybe one club. Then where's that institutional base that allows for leadership to develop and to thrive?
The resources to administer those programs. There's really not that much for our kids to do. Unfortunately, in metropolitan areas, there are more, there are more things and more places to go and activities to do, and you're kind of limited here. It's like either you're an athlete or, you're a studious type, and that's it. There really isn't that much offered in terms of artistic or cultural activities if a person wants to explore that side of their being.
Of our race. And the expectations placed upon us by our parents, our relatives, and the community as a whole. We were taught that we had to excel. Education was a way to better ourselves, to better our community. And one of the things I'll never forget was my mother telling me at the age of 9, oh yes, you will go to college. Oh yes, you will go to college. Mm-hmm. You will have what they felt they were capable of doing for their children as far as education was concerned. And one of the statistics that really jumped out at me was that here in the Fairfield West area, there are in the 85 to 90% of the homes had a Game Boy or PlayStation 2, but less than 50% had computers. So to me, that's saying, what are your priorities? Mm-hmm. What's more important?
Who's going to leave after 3 or 4 years and say, I tried as much as I could do, and then, I'm off, and I don't blame anybody, but it's going to take folks who want to be here for the long haul, who say, okay, I'm going to lay down roots here, I'm going to raise my children here, and they're hopefully going to raise their children here, and so then, there's a real sense, there's a continuity of idolizing Huntington. Now, with that being said, I really think folks got to recognize and get properly trained to deal with this new service economy, because Huntington is not going back to, just like the rest of society, it's not going back to a manufacturing industrial base. That may be a real strong component.
Due to a lot of different reasons. You can't be penalized for what you don't know. And I think the people in Huntington are, without sounding too militant, are oppressed to a certain extent because we don't see outside of our little box, and we don't know how much is really out there for us because nobody's ever taken the time to show us. And I think if we had more programs and mentors and people could see real black role models.
One of the first schools ever in the state of West Virginia for African Americans, Douglas High School, was built on 8th Avenue, 16th Street, which is now on Hal Greer Boulevard. But it was taken and tore down. A building that could have been redeveloped and refined and shaped for many different reasons. The same things that they do with other schools that they renovate and use the rooms to cultivate a people. Douglas High School was tore down. It was taken. They built AutoZone, which is a multi-million-dollar corporation, and left nothing for the African-American community at all. Buildings are being torn down and taken, and houses are being bought. When Huntington decided to consolidate Huntington High and Huntington East, it's 2 high schools, it was a very difficult challenge for the city of Huntington, for the people of Huntington. You had Huntington High was where your predominantly African American people attended school. Huntington East was where predominantly Caucasian Americans attended Huntington East. Talk about consolidating, and they were looking for property, and they were looking for land. Where will we put this school at? Where are we going to build this school? Well, they considered to build this high school
here in the Fairfield West Community. The Fairfield West Community was already equipped for a high school to be built. It was already equipped with a stadium, the old Marshall football stadium. They had fields for soccer fields. They could have used the community center, and they could have used the Douglas, which is now on 10th Avenue. They could have used the old Douglas for rooms and renovated it. But there were people that spoke up and spoke out against building a school in that community just to better the community. We don't want our school in that community.
And to be nurtured. If you lose your school system and you have 1 or 2 black teachers at the high school level in the entire high school system, that's insane. That's not negligence, that's insane.
You as being mentors to them and kind of help them along the way, because there is, I mean, it is a alarming dropout rate. So, but then again, you have to start, you know, at a young age trying to help those, because you can't wait till senior. And I'm not saying you can't do that then, but I think it'd be a lot easier to help them at a younger age, so they can see that positive side and work with them, so they wouldn't drop out.
Since the school consolidations and stuff, there appears to me to be an increased dropout rate. Like when we were in school, it was like, man, you dropped out of school? But now it's like you see 15-year-old kids walking around the neighborhood at 12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon when they should be in school, and that's becoming more commonplace. And that's scary, because that's a societal factor. If you can already see it, just imagine what the long-term effects are going to be like that, because those people are having children. So if their children are being raised in that value system, then that's bad. I mean, people don't, I mean, your kids need to see you get up, go to work, pay the bills, take the time with your family, do that kind of, I mean, you're not going to work and paying no bills.
When I say Artisan Avenue was a haven for the artists to migrate. And when I say artists, I mean the thespians, the writers, the singers, the painters, the poets. It was called Artisan Avenue because that's where these people would go sit on Artisan Avenue. And now, today, Artisan Avenue is not a place for artists, or a safe haven for artists to dwell on or live at.
For our artists to begin to interpret and express what this community is, who this community is, where it comes from, it is made of.
Yes.
The artist community must come together not as a writer, a dancer, a painter, a rapper. Must come together and express who we are and help to interpret that and to give us that soul everybody is longing for, so that it can weave its magic and touch the hearts and the spirits of people and bond them.
One of the demises of Huntington, West Virginia has been the drug scene. As we know that drugs moved in the late 80s, 86, 87, and it just overwhelmed the community and broke down the community. It took away families, broke up friendships, destroyed hundreds of lives.
1980, I think it was 1987, when the drugs really came and hit Huntington, it was cocaine at the time. Cocaine and marijuana. You did cocaine and marijuana, and people was like, okay, I can make money off this. And then in 88, we was kind of late on a lot of things, because 88, 89, that's when it turned to crack cocaine. Known as rocks or boulders, whatever. That's when it came up. But one of the problem was our community. These something, these shoes, and these clothes, socks, drawers, whatever. But then, you guys, this person right here, his family look at wearing the newest stuff like Nautica and Jordans and stuff. What would you do? There's no jobs here in Huntington.
They're not there. And, you know, they think, well, why am I going to do this? You know, I'm not going to get a decent job paying enough money to take care of me. And then you have, again, the drugs. You know, they make good money selling drugs.
And explore more of the community and more of the culture. And I see, you know, that there is hope, that, you know, we've been through some times where the drugs turned our children into, where the drugs have turned our children away from their parents, and where we see education not being taken as important, as our programs are being shut down, as they're taking buildings away, and no one is stepping up, being leaders in the community and stepping up. You see the J.W. Scott Community Center being shut down for over 2 years, and what are the effects of a community center being shut down? We're saying community center. This is the whole purpose. We're talking culture and community. You shut down a building and you take that away from people, away from children. You take jobs away from adults. You take so much away from people that you don't even realize the effects in the long run. You take away, you don't realize the effects in the long run. It's like what Carter G. Woodson stated, you know, history shows that it does not matter who is in power. Those who have not learned to think or do for themselves and have to depend solely on others never obtain any more rights or privileges in the end than they did in the beginning. You know, and you think about that, and the more you cut down these social programs, the more you're putting these kids out there at risk for criminal activities. You know, it's really, people say it's not difficult, you know, growing up, and why are you doing this, why are you doing that, but none of us really knows what's going on until we walk in the shoes of that person, and we really can't understand why a child would think the way they think or act the way they do. Well, you don't give them nothing to do. People believe there is a curse on the African Americans here in Huntington, West Virginia, that it is a trap. It is a place that no black man has any say-so in. Politics, economics, education. There's an alarming dropout rate of African American males. The imprisonment of the African American males from Huntington, West Virginia has been rising for years.
Really invested and told our young black males, you know what, you're special, and you have gifts, and you can really be something, and it doesn't mean you have to stand on the corner slinging a rock. It doesn't mean that you have to, you know, shoot the three. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't mean that you have to be the star running back. You can still be successful even if you don't do those things. And I think we've erred by not cultivating, you know, those gifts in our people. The city would be rocked. You know, there would be a spirit of revival, whereas, you know, people would be delivered, you know, because there are spirits, there are strongholds that plague the city, you know, to look at it from a spiritual perspective. You start there, seek ye first the kingdom of God, then everything else would fall into place.
Through part 1 of Community and Culture, the foundation, I'd like for you to also join me as I take you further into part 2, the past, and part 3, the present and the future.